Now let me show you how I navigate the dashboard and review my clinical notifications. So this patient has a bracket debonded on the 3/7. So the first thing I would check is if that bracket was engaged into the wire. So I would check the scans, and as you can see that the bracket was engaged and the wire is now sitting there with no bracket. So we would make an appointment to replace that, but before I would make an appointment is I would check when their next appointment is. If it's near future, I would leave it until their next appointment, but this appointment was in about 8 weeks, so I would go and make an appointment for Abby. Olivia has a slight unseat on the 2-2. So the first thing I do with aligner unseats is I check their scans, obviously. And as you can see, she does have a slight unseat on the 2-2. However, the aligners are fitting well in all the other areas. So this might be a binding contact. So where 2 contacts between the teeth are tight that the teeth can't move. So with Olivia, I checked when she last had IPR, which was at her initial insert, so back 18 aligners ago. And her next IPR is due at aligner 32, so we still have a few aligners to go until then. So for Olivia, I would bring her in to check binding contacts with a hygienist. Fatima has a arch wire disengagement and an open clip on the 4-1, which obviously if this has occurred, that tooth won't track with the braces. So I always check the previous scan to make sure it is a recent occurring. In this case it is. You can see in the last scan that her bracket was closed and the arch wire was engaged. So she may have recently had an appointment where arch wires were changed. So I would check her last appointment notes, and if there's nothing that has flagged that they couldn't engage the bracket, I would bring Fatima back in to re-engage that bracket. So Crystal has a noticeable unseat on the 1-3, and you can see that she's also sent a message saying no binding contacts when checked today. The reason Crystal has sent this message is if we have a look at the message that we send, it automatically asks them to check for any binding contacts with floss. So this just automates the process and eliminates having to go back and forth with patients. And you can see that Crystal has been a really consistent patient. She's scanning on time. She's had very limited no-goes. And I also know that Crystal recently had IPR done earlier this month. So it's not likely to be a binding contact. So this is an unseat that I would escalate directly to my doctor because it's clinically out of my scope. Juliet has messaged a direct message, so she's asking for clinical advice from Dr. Duncan. And I do know that recently Juliet came in and saw Dr. Duncan regarding an oral infection. So this is something that I would automatically escalate to my doctor because I can't provide that clinical advice at that level. For Charlotte, as an example, you may see that she's got quite a few no-goes, but this is because we've used the force go feature because we know that Charlotte has been non-compliant with her aligner wear. So rather than letting her, kind of go through treatment and the aligners getting really poor fitted, we've decided to use the no-goes as a motivation for her, which is working quite well. When a patient receives a no-go, it can be due to a number of factors, such as a binding contact, patient compliance, and more than likely it's the biological response of the patient. When we do receive a no-go, we do have the option of the forcing go feature, which is simply a click of the button. This allows us, rather than putting a tooth exclusion in, we can monitor the treatment closely and hope that the aligner fit does improve. However, if it doesn't, we would escalate it to our doctor. And in doing so, we keep the patient engaged by not receiving multiple no-goes consecutively. Another feature that I love about dental monitoring is the pausing feature. So often, actually more so, at least 3 times a day, we get messages that patients have lost their aligners, they're broken, or they're unable to, they've misplaced them. So we can actually change their aligner number on our end, which automatically updates on their app. And we can also use the pausing feature to then reset their scan for their set interval. So for example, if Charlotte had lost her aligner today, but she was due to scan tomorrow, I can actually reset this to be due in 5 days' time, so she can wear her new aligner for the set 5 day time. So for this patient, my doctor has instructed me to exclude the 1-3 unseat. They're happy with how the tooth is tracking and they don't want the patient to receive any more no-goes for this unseated tooth. The protocols are super easy to use and really user-friendly. So I'm going to show you how to exclude a tooth. So if you go into protocol and then click on your aligners tab, This will drop down with a tracking tab, and you'll then have the option to exclude your tooth as a slight unseat still present, noticeable, and noticeable unseat still present. This patient's unseat is currently at a noticeable level, so we will be excluding the tooth for all 4 of those levels. If, for example, your unseat was only at a slight unseat and the doctor wanted to ignore it for the level that it's at, you can actually only ignore it as a slight unseat, and once it becomes noticeable, you'll receive another no-go. For those of you just starting your DMC journey, keep going, take on the challenges, and with this progressive technology, you'll be so excited to see where it takes you.